In May 2018, at a police station in Trstenik, Serbia, a woman came in to report something that, on paper, probably sounded strange from the very start. She told the officers that something had been following her on the way to the town fair, moving from one streetlight to another as if it were keeping pace with her. It was the kind of complaint that most people would expect police to dismiss as fear, confusion, or maybe just a misunderstanding in the dark. But what makes this clip so memorable is that the officers would soon find themselves staring at something they believed matched exactly what she had just described. After filing her complaint, the woman left the station. The officers remained behind, probably still thinking over what they had just heard, but with no reason yet to believe that the story would follow her indoors.
Ne pojavljuje se vrlo, dobro stati.
To nikad nije bilo do sada. Koliko prate? Evo. Lepo na ovome.
Evo uđe dežur.
Evo, ti je lakše, mislim. Ne je nikoga na prvi uspio.
Nije u dežurnu, dole od trojku kod mene.
Uvatio ga.
Niko je toliko dobar da...
Gledaj sam, evo će, gledaj sam.
Izađe kao iz zida.
Izađe u dežuru uđe. To mi žena jedna tako pričala da nju pratila kad išli na vašar. Ja sam se zabavao. Kao Dragoš ide po baderama i ide za njim.
Koliko lepše na mobilu.
Not long after she had left, this strange figure appeared on the station's CCTV, moving through the lobby from one room to another in a way that immediately drew attention. One of the officers sitting at the desk noticed it first and quickly called the others over, wanting to make sure he wasn't imagining what he had just seen. What unsettled them most was not only the shape itself, but the timing. Because it appeared shortly after the woman had left, it made it hard for them not to connect the two events in their minds. To the officers, this didn't feel like a vague shadow or some easy camera glitch they could laugh off afterward. It looked like something moving with intent, and because none of them had witnessed anything like it before, the moment stayed with them. This incident remained in their memory long after that night, and it's easy to understand why. When someone walks into a police station describing something impossible, the last thing anyone expects is for the building's own cameras to seem to show exactly that. What those officers saw stayed on a screen, but in the next case, the situation became something they had to face in person. A police officer and a bystander were trying to restrain a man whose behavior had already become chaotic enough to draw attention. But from the beginning, the situation seemed different from an ordinary struggle. It wasn't just that he was resisting, it was the way he was moving, the intensity behind it, and the sense that neither of the men trying to hold him down felt fully in control of what they were dealing with. Even in those first moments, there was already something deeply unsettling about the scene. His behavior was erratic, his movements were hard to predict, and the officer and the bystander both appeared to sense that this was escalating into something they weren't prepared for. The situation had become even stranger. His legs lifted up in a way that looked unnatural, almost as if some unseen force was pulling at him while they struggled to keep him down. At the same time, his body seemed to rise in a way that made the entire scene feel less like a normal restraint and more like something neither of them could explain. His voice, too, only added to that impression, sounding distorted and inhuman enough to make the whole moment even more unnerving. And then, as if that weren't already enough, a chair suddenly flew across the floor, making it seem as though the room itself had become part of the struggle. By that point, the fear in the scene is obvious. The tension rose fast, and whatever certainty either of them had at the beginning seems to disappear completely. The clip ends with the man collapsing unconscious, but instead of bringing clarity, that only makes the whole thing feel more unresolved. Whether there was a rational explanation for what happened or not, the footage leaves behind the same feeling that clearly stayed with the people witnessing it. Whatever they had just experienced did not feel ordinary at all. And that brings us to a Riverside County deputy who found himself in a situation that changed almost instantly from a routine traffic stop into something unexplainable and life-threatening. He had pulled over a Toyota Sienna minivan, and at first, it probably looked like one more stop in a long shift. But the moment he got close to the driver's side, it became clear this was no ordinary encounter.
Hey man! Hey! Where you going? Where you going? Stop really quick! Come here! Put the car in park. Put the car in park, alright? So we're trying to help you out with this subject.
As the deputy approached, he saw that the driver was already bleeding heavily from his left arm, enough that blood had stained the seat around him. The man appeared disoriented and unsteady, but he kept insisting that he was fine. The words themselves offered no reassurance, because anyone looking at the scene could immediately tell that he wasn't. Faced with someone injured and clearly not in a normal state, the deputy moved quickly, trying to control the situation before it got worse.
How you doing? You hurt? How you get hurt? No, it's okay. It's okay. Step out real quick. Come on, let me help you. Where are you bleeding from? Your arm? Okay, come here. Let me put a tourniquet on you, okay? It's 2-inch gashes.
With remarkable calm, the deputy helped the driver out of the van and wrapped the man's wounded arm in an effort to stop the bleeding. Up to that point, it looked like the situation might stay contained, tense maybe, but manageable, until everything shifted. As the deputy tried to guide him and continue helping, the man reached toward his side, and the officer's instincts took over immediately. He broke away and moved for cover, knowing in that split second that whatever was about to happen next could turn deadly.
Any weapons on you, man? How'd this happen? What happened?
No, it's good, it's okay.
Dime qué pasó, señor.
No, nada.
¿Cómo te cortaste? A ver un poquito, ¿ok? Pero tengo que poner...
No, it's okay, it's okay.
No, stop.
No, it's okay.
You're bleeding pretty much.
No, no, it's okay, it's okay.
No, I need you to stop.
No, 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 it's okay, it's okay.
I need you to stop.
No,
Relax.
it's okay, it's okay.
Relax. Go ahead, sit down. Sit down. Sit
No,
down.
no, it's okay.
No, tengo que ser ayudado, ¿ok? Está... You're bleeding too much, alright? What happened? Hey, hey. Reach for something.
When the deputy approached again, the man was no longer calm at all. Instead, he suddenly charged forward with a knife in his hand, forcing the officer to react instantly. With almost no time left to think, the deputy drew his weapon and fired, bringing the man to the ground. It is one of those body cam moments that shows how fast a scene can escalate, because only seconds earlier, the officer had been trying to save the man's life, and then, almost without warning, he was fighting to protect his own.
11-11. Looks like he's stabbing himself. 11-11. It's gonna be between Beach and 53rd and Beach. ¿Qué pasó, señor? ¿Dónde está el cuchillo? He's not injured. He's armed. Shots fired. Shots fired. Charge at me with a knife. Shots fired.
Afterward, a lot of people who watched the footage tried to make sense of the driver's behavior in supernatural terms. They were sure that the man had to be possessed by something, especially because he seemed to show almost no visible reaction to the amount of blood he was losing. Others argued there was nothing paranormal about it at all, and that shock, severe mental distress, or some kind of psychotic state could explain why he kept moving, as if he wasn't even aware of the pain. Whatever the explanation, the clip leaves behind the same unsettling truth. A person can seem calm one second and become a deadly threat the next. And when that happens, even the most routine stop can turn into something unforgettable. Now, while that was a fight against something you can see, the next one isn't nearly as clear. On July 20th, 2023, police in Brazil responded to a noise complaint. It was the kind of call that probably sounded simple at first. Locals believed the noise might be coming from troublesome neighbors nearby, the sort of disturbance people complain about every day. But when officers arrived and began checking the property in question, they quickly realized they were dealing with something much stranger than loud music or a domestic dispute.
Mano, que é isso, bicho?
There was no one living inside the house, and yet the doors were reportedly banging on their own. From the outside alone, that would already have been enough to unsettle anyone, because the place appeared empty. There were no signs of people running off, no obvious movement through the windows, and no immediate explanation like strong wind pushing things around. And once the officers stepped inside to see whether there was any human involvement, the atmosphere of the call changed almost immediately.
Caralho, mano, bora, mano. Me livre, mano. Vai, mano, vai, mano. Vai, mano, vai, mano.
What they expected to find was a person, a squatter, maybe someone hiding and trying to scare them off. Instead, they found no one, while the disturbances continued in a way that made the whole scene feel increasingly unnatural. The officers themselves reportedly began to believe they weren't dealing with an ordinary trespassing case at all, but something they could neither identify nor confront in any normal way. And even though the encounter seemed unable to get any worse than this, objects suddenly began falling on their own, which was enough to convince them that staying there any longer was a bad idea.
Vai, mano.
At that point, whatever was happening in the house seemed less like random movement and more like something reacting to their presence. And that is what makes the clip work so well as a story, because the officers arrive expecting to restore peace to the neighborhood, and instead end up retreating from a place where their usual authority, and even the idea of being armed, suddenly feels useless against something they can't see. Whether someone believes it was truly paranormal or not, it's easy to understand why the officers walked away from that house shaken. And strangely enough, this wasn't an isolated case. On March 14th, 2017, police in Brazil responded again to what at first sounded like a fairly ordinary call. Staff working at a school had reported a strange noise disturbance coming from inside the building, and from what they could tell, the sound seemed to be coming from only one floor. It was the kind of call that probably didn't seem especially unusual at first, at least not until the officers actually arrived and realized they weren't dealing with trespassers, vandals, or anyone they could actually see. By the time they got inside, it became clear that no person was causing the noise. Doors were slamming shut with enough force to echo through the building, but there was no one there moving through the halls, no one hiding nearby, and no obvious reason for the disturbance. That's what made the moment so unsettling. The sound itself was loud enough to draw police to the scene, but whatever was causing it didn't appear to have a visible source. Naturally, that's the point where the officers stopped treating it like a normal call and started moving more carefully, trying to figure out whether there was any explanation at all. As they moved closer, they realized it wasn't just a normal door making the noise. It was a small fire suppression fixture that was moving with force. That made the whole thing even harder to dismiss. The officers approached cautiously, expecting that once they got close enough, they would find some practical explanation. Maybe air pressure, maybe damage to the building, maybe something mechanical. But as they stepped closer, the noise suddenly stopped. The lobby itself showed no visible signs of wind or airflow strong enough to cause anything like that. And yet the moment they began to turn away, another loud slam reportedly came from behind them.
Sinistro, né? Louco, meu.
And that is really where the story stays. Whatever they experienced that night apparently never got a proper explanation. Whether it was something mechanical, something environmental, or something they genuinely could not account for, the two officers left convinced they had encountered activity that didn't feel connected to anything ordinary. That's what gives the footage its lasting effect, because it isn't just about doors moving on their own. It's about trained officers walking into a place expecting one kind of disturbance and coming away feeling like they had stepped into something they couldn't explain at all. But at least in this case, whatever was happening stayed inside. The next one, however, doesn't. An officer was out on night patrol, expecting the kind of shift that usually passes without much happening. The road ahead was dark, quiet, and empty, and there was nothing about the area that suggested he was about to run into something he couldn't explain. But then, in the middle of the road, well after midnight, a figure appeared out of nowhere, and the moment he saw it, the entire stop changed. A few steps ahead of the patrol car, standing in the dark, was what looked like a woman. She appeared barefoot, with wild, disheveled hair, and the sight of her was strange enough to make the officer stop immediately. At first, the natural instinct would have been to get out and check whether she was hurt, lost, or in some kind of danger. But according to the story attached to the clip, that instinct quickly gave way to fear. There was something about the way she appeared there, alone in the darkness, that made the whole moment feel wrong.
Oh God! No! Oh my God! No! Oh.
There doesn't seem to be much reliable public background attached to this footage, which is part of what makes it harder to fully judge. But even without more context, it's easy to understand why something like this would unsettle anyone, especially an officer alone at night with no clear idea of who or what is standing in front of the car. And that's really the question the clip leaves behind. If you were in that position, would you get out and go check on her? Or would the fear of not understanding what you were looking at stop you first? Seeing something once is unsettling, but living with it is something else entirely. On July 6, 2021, a couple in Buckinghamshire, England, claimed they were living with something they couldn't explain. At first they assumed someone had broken into their house as they were coming home again and again to a mess they didn't leave behind. But after several police interventions, it became clear they were dealing with something else. They became sure they were dealing with a paranormal presence, which they eventually even gave a name: Dave. According to them, the strange activity had started not long after they moved into their 3-story home in 2018, and over time, it became unsettling enough that they felt the need to document it. The couple, Ben Hubbard, a PE teacher, and Lainey Clark, an elementary school teacher, said objects would move on their own and odd things would happen inside the house with no obvious cause. To try to capture whatever was going on, they installed a camera in the kitchen, hoping that if something happened again, they would finally have proof that it wasn't all in their heads. The footage shows a drawer opening and objects appearing to fly out from inside it, as if something had reached in and thrown them across the room. What makes the clip feel so unsettling is that there doesn't seem to be anyone there causing it. The kitchen is quiet, the movement is sudden, and by the time it ends, even the door appears to close on its own. Whether people believe it was genuinely paranormal or not, the couple said these incidents kept happening often enough that they eventually felt they couldn't stay in the house comfortably anymore. And that's really what gives the story its weight, because whatever they believed was there, it changed the way they lived in their own home. Now, while those were objects moving inside a kitchen, this next clip shows something moving through an empty hallway. On December 17, 2014, a piece of CCTV footage began circulating after security personnel reportedly passed it on to police, believing they might have caught a person moving through a hallway. At first glance, that assumption makes sense. In low-quality surveillance footage, almost anything moving quickly through a corridor can look human for a moment. But according to people who later shared the clip, what appeared on camera didn't move in a way that felt normal, and that is exactly why the footage ended up being discussed as something paranormal. What the camera seems to capture is a dark shape moving across the hallway with unnatural speed, so quickly that it barely gives the viewer time to process what they're seeing before it's already gone. That speed is really what gives the clip its reputation, because if the footage is genuine and unaltered, It doesn't resemble the pace or movement of an ordinary person passing through a building. The black shape appears at one end of the corridor, and for a brief moment, it almost looks like a person standing still. But once it crosses the hallway, the illusion of it being human reportedly disappears. That is why the clip stuck with so many people. It isn't just that there's a shadow in the frame, but that the movement seems wrong in a way that instantly pushes the mind towards something unnatural. Whether it was a trick of the camera, a distortion, or something no one could properly explain, the reason the footage spread at all was simple. If people hadn't seen it on video, most of them probably would never have believed the story in the first place. Now, this last clip comes from a school on the south side of Cork City, Ireland, and even years later, it's still one of the most talked about haunted CCTV videos online. The footage is tied to Deer Park CBS, where security cameras monitored by the school's guard reportedly captured a series of strange events during the early hours of October 1st, 2017. What makes it so memorable is that the corridor looks completely empty the entire time, which means there's no visible person to blame for what starts happening next. The school's deputy principal, Aaron Wolf, later said the footage had genuinely puzzled staff, and the school itself became briefly famous for the possibility that something unexplained had been caught on camera. At first, doors can be seen opening and slamming shut on their own, followed by lockers shaking hard enough to grab anyone's attention. Then one of the lockers swings open and its contents spill out, making the whole thing feel less like a draft or a loose hinge and more like something actively moving through the hallway. That's the point where the video starts to feel unnerving, even if you don't believe in ghosts, because the timing and force of it are hard to ignore. What kept the story alive afterward was not just the footage itself, but the school's history and the theories that grew around it. Deer Park CBS, one of the older schools on the south side of Cork, was soon being described online as haunted, with some linking the activity to local stories about the area once being associated with executions at Gallows Green. Whether that explanation means anything or not is up to the viewer, but the footage certainly did what few school security clips ever managed to do. It made people keep talking long after the corridor had gone quiet again. Now that was all for today, folks. If you enjoyed these horrifying clips, click to see more on the video on screen.